The tray hits marble before she can stop it, a sound like a gunshot inside a cathedral. Wine arcs across white silk. Crystal shatters beneath someone's heel. A woman near the musician's gallery pulls in a sharp breath, the kind you make when you've just witnessed something that cannot be undone. Nobody looks at the broken glass. Every face in the Hall of Embers turns toward the same thing. The Dragon Prince, on one knee, before a servant girl. Elara's fingers close around empty air where the tray used to be. Heat floods her throat. She tastes copper. The kind of copper you taste when panic arrives before thought does. No one moves. Above the banquet floor, hundreds of flame orbs drift beneath the vaulted ceiling, their pale fire sliding like oil across polished armor and jeweled masks, and the carefully composed expressions of people who are very good at pretending. Crimson banners carry the crest of House Vaelor between dragonbone pillars thick as ancient trees. The candles on the throne dais burn without flickering. Everything in the room is designed to feel permanent, except the prince kneeling in the center of it. Crown Prince Lucien Vaelor remains still, not speaking, not blinking, looking directly at her. The silence stretches long enough for Elara to hear wax dripping from the candle stands beside the throne dais. Long enough for her to count her own heartbeats. 3, 4, 5. Then chairs scrape backward. The northern princess seated beside the queen lowers her goblet slowly. Her eyes move from Lucien's face down to Elara's uniform, the stained gray fabric that marks a servant from the river districts, and settle there with the particular contempt of someone who has just been made to feel something they consider beneath them. A captain of the royal guard shifts his hand toward the sword at his hip. Somewhere in the back of the room, a voice, female, low, barely audible. Who is she? Elara wants the floor to open beneath her. 7 years inside the palace teaches a person things that cannot be untaught. Eyes lowered, hands steady, speak only when spoken to. Never linger near nobility longer than necessary. Move like shadow, breathe like furniture. Exist in the margins of every room and leave no trace of yourself in the center. And never, under any circumstance, draw the attention of the crown. Yet here is the heir to Aurelith, kneeling before her with the entire continent watching. Lucien finally speaks. Come with me. Quiet, careful, like he has been rehearsing something far longer than this moment. The room tightens around those 3 words like a fist. No title, no command, no explanation offered to the dozens of noble houses watching a royal succession gathering turn into something none of them have language for yet. Just those 3 words, landing in the center of the hall like a blade sliding beneath armor. Elara's pulse stumbles. The prince should not know her face. He passes servants every day without looking twice. Hundreds of them moving through the corridors beneath the sky forges, carrying coal, wine, linens, whispered messages no one is meant to remember. Shadows in gray cloth. The architecture of his daily life, invisible as walls. But his eyes stay fixed on hers. Not searching, already certain. That is what frightens her most. A cold current crawls beneath the glove, covering her left hand. Not now. Please, not now. Queen Seraphine rises from the throne dais. Gold-threaded scales catch light along the sleeves of her ceremonial robes as she descends the marble stairs one at a time. Unhurried, the musicians lower their instruments completely. The room doesn't go quiet so much as it stops pretending. No, the queen says. Lucien does not stand. Seraphine stops beside him. The silver crown of House Vaelor catches the firelight. You shame this court before the alliance houses of the north. A vein shifts once beneath Lucien's jaw. I was not aware, he says evenly, that dignity required permission. Those words land harder than shouting would have. Several nobles glance sideways toward the foreign envoys lining the outer tables. One of them mutters behind a jeweled fan. Another studies Lucien with visible calculation, the look of a person already drafting a letter home. Elara feels the shift before she can name it. This is no longer humiliation. This is politics turning dangerous. The convergence bells begin tolling outside the palace walls. 1, 2, 3. Deep iron vibrations roll through the hall from the towers above Aurelith. Tomorrow night, before the final bell of the celestial convergence, Lucien must stand before the Skyforges and choose a royal bride. Every noble family in the kingdom understands this. The alliance courts crossing half a continent understand this. Without the right, the dragon line weakens. Without the dragon line, the eastern borders collapse. Without the eastern borders, everyone in this room knows what waits beyond them. And tonight, in front of every house sworn to the crown, the future king kneels before a servant from the river districts of South Vaelor. Lucien rises slowly. The movement brings him closer. Too close. Elara catches the scent beneath the ceremonial spice oil, smoke and cold iron. Something older, something that doesn't belong in a banquet hall. A faint silver fracture marks the skin near his wrist before his sleeve hides it again. Her stomach tightens. The glove on her left hand grows hotter. Lucien notices. His gaze drops once to her covered hand. Just once. Then it snaps back to her face with a flicker sharp enough to cut through composure. His, not hers. As if he has just confirmed something he has spent years telling himself couldn't be true. The queen sees it. What is beneath the glove? The question cuts through the room like a blade. Elara steps backward before she can stop herself. The heel of her shoe catches against shattered crystal. Nothing, your majesty. Remove it. The heat beneath the fabric surges violently, pulsing into her palm like something waking. Not here. Not in front of all of them. Lucien moves between her and the queen before the command can land twice. No. The guard captain's armor creaks as he straightens. Somewhere behind the banquet tables, a servant drops a pitcher. Wine spreads across the marble in a dark red sheet that no one moves to clean. Queen Seraphine studies her son in silence. Then she looks at Elara. Not at her face this time. At the glove. At the way Elara presses her left hand against her side, as though she is trying to contain something alive beneath the fabric. When she speaks again, her voice lowers. Where did you find her? Lucien does not answer. A draft moves through the Hall of Embers. Flame orbs sway overhead. Outside, beyond the palace walls, dragon horns sound across Aurelith. Not ceremonial. Warning calls. The noise tears through the city once. Then again, closer. Higher pitched. Several nobles rise from their seats. The captain of the guard strides toward the high windows overlooking the eastern districts. His expression changes the moment he reaches them. Your Majesty. The palace trembles. Dust drifts from the vaulted ceiling in fine gray lines. Far beyond the black towers of the upper city, orange fire climbs into the night sky. The eastern frontier has reached Aurelith. The hall fractures into panic. Chairs overturn. Courtiers crowd toward the exits in waves. A child begins crying near the northern envoy tables before being swept away by the crowd. The smell of smoke reaches the hall from outside. Real smoke now, not ceremonial. But Lucien still does not move away from Elara. The queen watches him with something she almost never allows herself. Disbelief. Then her eyes shift downward again. A thin line of gold light slips through the seam of Elara's glove. Nobody else notices. The queen does. And in that single instant, the entire room changes, not because of the rebellion outside the walls, but because Queen Seraphine suddenly looks at Elara the way rulers look at buried things that were never meant to survive. Around them, the Hall of Embers fractures into noise. Nobles surge beneath the dragonbone arches. Servants stumble over overturned chairs carrying trays no one notices anymore. The eastern windows flash orange again as another explosion rolls across the upper districts. A low vibration hums beneath the marble floor. Dragonfire. Closer now. The captain drops to one knee beside the queen, ash dust clinging to his armor. Eastern gate breached, he says. House Morvain banners confirmed inside the outer ring. The room recoils at the name. The queen does not. Seal the palace districts. Then, eyes shifting back to Elara, and close the hall. The bronze doors begin moving. Chains rattle overhead. Several nobles protest as guards force the exits shut, not to stop the rebellion from entering, but to stop the panic inside from destroying itself. Elara's pulse pounds harder. Trapped. Lucien notices her glance toward the doors. You're safe, he says quietly. The lie lands between them, untouched. A servant girl does not become safe because a prince says so. Not in Aurelith. not with half the kingdom watching him choose her over alliance bloodlines, while rebellion climbs the palace walls. Bring her forward. 2 royal guards advance. Lucien steps into their path before they can reach Elara. Steel whispers from a sheath somewhere in the hall. The movement freezes everyone, not because Lucien draws a weapon, but because he almost does. The hand that hasn't yet reached the hilt says everything the hand reaching it would have. For one dangerous second, mother and son stand perfectly still beneath the drifting firelight while the hall holds its breath, waiting to discover which one the guards obey first. Then Lucien lowers his hand. Barely. Remove every envoy from this chamber, the queen says without looking away from him. No one leaves the upper palace. One of the northern nobles rises sharply. You cannot imprison alliance houses during a succession gathering. You mistake containment for imprisonment. The noble sits back down. Elara feels the heat beneath her glove pulse again. Sharper this time, almost rhythmic, like something inside her is waking up and doesn't understand why it should stay quiet. Lucien notices the slight movement of her fingers. His expression shifts, not with surprise, but with recognition. A memory crossing his face too fast for anyone else to catch. He knows, not enough to explain it aloud, but enough to look at her covered hand, like he has seen the light beneath the fabric before. If the mark is genuine, succession law applies. A thin older lord near the western tables, his voice carrying the particular calm of a man who has spent his entire life waiting for exactly this kind of emergency. Silence follows immediately. No one challenges him. Another noble leans forward slowly. Then she belongs to the crown until the rite concludes. Belongs. The word crawls through Elara's chest like cold water. Lucien turns sharply toward them. She is standing right here. The older lord does not flinch, and the kingdom is burning right outside these walls. No one answers him, because no one can. Another explosion rolls across Aurelith, close enough this time to shake the stained glass overhead. The hall darkens briefly as smoke drifts across the upper windows. Elara looks toward the city without meaning to. Beyond the palace towers, orange fire spreads through the eastern terraces. Bells ring without rhythm across the capital now. Refugee lanterns move through the lower streets like scattered embers, small bright things trying to outrun something too large to name. Lucien follows her gaze. His jaw tightens once. Then he looks back at her with the same expression he had when he first knelt. Not performance. Decision. A dangerous one. Elara. Her own name from the queen's mouth feels wrong. Like something being handled without permission. Come here. Every instinct in Elara's body resists. Lucien takes one slow step closer to her instead. Small movement. Enough. The guards notice. So does Seraphine. And suddenly Elara understands the shape of the trap closing around all of them. If she obeys the queen, she disappears into the succession rites. If Lucien stops them publicly, the court fractures around him before the convergence even begins. Either way, Aurelith tears further apart. The queen studies her son for a long moment. Then she says quietly, "You remember her." Not a question. Lucien says nothing. The silence answers anyway. A strange stillness passes through Seraphine's face. Not shock. Not confusion. Recognition. The kind that arrives when a fear you buried years ago steps back into the light and refuses to return underground. Before dawn, the queen says at last, her voice low enough that only the nearest guards hear it, "The girl is to be confined beneath the palace vaults. No one enters without my authority." Elara feels the air leave her lungs. Lucien's stare hardens. The queen turns away before he can answer. That is when the palace windows explode inward. Glass rains across the Hall of Embers in a long, howling sheet. The nearest nobles throw themselves backward as wind tears through the shattered frames. Flame orbs whip violently beneath the ceiling. One crashes into a banquet table, scattering burning oil across embroidered silk. A dragon roars somewhere beyond the eastern towers. Not distant. Inside, Lucien grabs her wrist. Not the gloved hand. The other one. Move. He pulls her sideways, just as another section of stained glass explodes inward. Colored shards skid across the marble where she had been standing seconds before. The captain shouts for archers. Steel scrapes free around the hall. But Lucien is already dragging Elara through the chaos toward the rear colonnade behind the throne dais, moving like a man who has memorized the exits to every room in the palace and never once hoped he would need them. Elara. The queen's voice cuts sharply across the chamber. Lucien does not stop. That alone changes the room more than the Dragonfire outside. The guards hesitate. Only for a second. Still enough. The heir to Aurelith is openly disobeying the crown. Elara nearly slips as they descend the narrow servant stairs behind the Hall of Embers. These are her stairs, the ones she has walked 1,000 times, carrying coal and wine and messages for people who never learned her name. They feel different with the prince behind her. The sounds above dull into vibrations through stone. Shouting, running feet, bells hammering through the city without pattern. Lucien keeps moving. Torchlight flashes across walls slick with centuries of smoke and oil. The lower corridors beneath the palace smell different from the upper halls. Colder, older, wet iron, and ash. The smell of a place that remembers things the surface has forgotten. Elara. His voice drops lower as they turn another corner. Did anyone ever see the mark before tonight? The question hits too fast. She looks at him. He already knows too much. No. A muscle shifts near his jaw. You hid it for 7 years. You should not even know it exists. Lucien says nothing after that. Just tighter silence. The kind a person fills with things they are not ready to say yet. Ahead, 2 palace guards stationed beside an iron gate straighten immediately when they recognize him. Their eyes flick once toward Elara's uniform, then toward the gold light leaking faintly through the seam of her glove. One guard steps forward. Your Highness, the Queen ordered the lower vault sealed until... Lucien places his signet ring against the lock mechanism. Bronze gears groan. She gave many orders tonight, he says. The gate opens. Neither guard follows them. The corridor beyond drops deeper beneath the mountain. The air grows colder with every step. Elara hears water somewhere in the dark below. Then another sound beneath it. A hum. Low. Metallic. Almost alive. The heat beneath her glove pulses harder. Lucien slows immediately. Torchlight reveals carvings running along the walls now. Dragons coiled around crown figures, ancient script hammered into obsidian panels. Long fractures melted directly into the stone, as if fire burned through the mountain itself once, long ago. And the rock has been trying to close the wound ever since. Elara stares at one relief as they pass. The crown figure is not holding a weapon. They are holding another person's hand. The hum deepens. Her palm burns sharply enough that she stops walking. Lucien turns instantly. The gold light beneath the glove spills brighter across the corridor walls. The carvings around them begin glowing faintly in response. Not all of them, only the ones nearest her. A terrible stillness settles over Lucien's face. What is this place? She asks. He doesn't answer immediately. He watches the walls, watches the carvings waking around her, as if he is measuring how much truth she can hold before it breaks something. The first Dragon Kings built these vaults before Aurelith had walls. Another pulse moves through the corridor. The hum answers her heartbeat now. Lucien steps toward one of the obsidian panels lining the chamber wall and wipes part of the dust away with the back of his sleeve. Elara's breath catches. Not names. Records. Hundreds of them carved into black stone. Dates. Bloodlines. Succession rights. And beside several royal names, marks. Small symbols etched next to the crowned heirs. Different each century, but repeating. Lucien's fingers stop beside one inscription nearly erased by time. The crown tells the kingdom Dragonfire passes through blood, he says quietly. That is not entirely true. The corridor falls silent except for distant horns above the city. Elara looks again at the carvings beside the royal names. Not all the symbols belong to kings. Several belong to unnamed figures standing beside them. Smaller, uncrowned. The heat beneath her glove spikes violently. Stone cracks somewhere deeper in the vault. Elara, Lucien says carefully, when you were in Careth Hollow. He stops. Footsteps echo through the upper corridor. Multiple. Coming fast. Lucien grabs a torch from the wall. Keep moving. They descend another staircase spiraling deeper beneath the palace foundations until the corridor opens into a vast circular chamber. Elara steps inside and freezes. Across the far wall stretches the shattered remains of an ancient mural, burned nearly black with age. Most of the faces are gone, most of the paint destroyed, but one figure still remains visible beneath the scorch marks. A servant girl kneeling before a dragon king. Gold fire spreading across her hand. Not the same shape as Elara's mark. The same wound. The painted king kneels above her with his head lowered, just like Lucien had. Elara takes an involuntary step backward. The chamber hums harder around her. Lucien moves closer to the mural. Elara, you knew. The words leave her before she can stop them. The chamber falls still. Not silent. The hum continues beneath everything, threading through the stone. But Lucien stops moving. You knew what the mark meant. I knew pieces of it. Enough to drag me beneath the palace. His gaze flicks briefly toward the glowing crack slipping past the edge of her glove. The gold has spread past her wrist now. She sees him notice, sees the exact moment it unsettles him. Another pulse hits her palm. Pain flashes sharp enough to blur the chamber, and suddenly, cold wind, snow against stone, blood soaking through cloth. Elara grips the wall hard. The vault disappears. For one fractured instant she sees white mountains under storm-dark skies. A boy collapsed beside shattered black wood. Silver blood across snow. Breathing too shallow. Her own hands shaking from cold while she drags him through the blizzard one step at a time. Then the vision tears away. She sucks in air violently. Lucien reaches for her on instinct. The moment his fingers close around her bare wrist, the chamber lurches again. This time both of them freeze. Firelight tilts sideways. Snow crashes against a forge roof. A dragon scream tears through the mountains. Lucien on his knees beside a furnace, younger, bleeding from the mouth, molten gold burning beneath his skin. Elara forcing a heated iron blade against shattered chains wrapped around his arm. His hand gripping hers hard enough to bruise. Don't let them find me. The memory slams shut. Lucien jerks backward. The torch nearly falls from his hand. For several seconds, neither of them speaks. Elara can still feel the cold from the mountain storm trapped inside her lungs. Lucien stares at her as if he has forgotten where they are. Or when. Then the horns above Aurelith sound again. Reality crashes back into the chamber. You should not be down here, Elara says quietly. You think I don't know that? Rougher than anything else he has said to her yet. He drags a hand across his face and turns toward the carved records again, but his attention keeps pulling back toward her arm. Toward the spreading gold. It was smaller before, he says. Elara pulls the sleeve down immediately. It changes when you're near me. The words hang between them. Lucien goes completely still. Another tremor rolls through the foundations. The rebellion is climbing higher into the city. Time narrowing. Lucien presses both hands against the edge of the stone table beneath the records. The torch beside him crackles softly. For the first time since the Hall of Embers, he looks tired. Not royal. Not untouchable. Just exhausted down to the bone. I thought you died. Elara says nothing. I went back to Careth Hollow after the coronation rites ended. His eyes stay fixed on the carved records instead of her. The forge was gone. A long silence. The chamber hum deepens. Elara remembers ash drifting through snow. Collapsed beams. Her father's tools buried beneath black ice. There was blood in the mountain pass. His voice lowers further. Too much. You left, Elara says. Not accusation. Worse. Simple truth. Lucien closes his eyes briefly. The silence after that stretches long enough for the vault to breathe around them. Then footsteps echo sharply somewhere above the staircase. Closer. Multiple guards descending. Lucien's eyes open. But before he reaches for the torch, he says quietly, I searched for you for 3 years. The words stay inside the vault like smoke that cannot escape. 3 years. Not long enough to save anyone. Long enough to ruin a life spent waiting. Another tremor rolls through the foundations. Dust slips from the ceiling. Dragon horns answer one another through the burning districts above. The convergence bells begin again. Fewer hours now. Lucien grabs the torch and moves deeper into the vault. The lower passage still connects to the western furnace tunnels. Elara does not follow immediately. The mural behind her flickers in the firelight. Servant kneeling before king. Gold burning through her hand while the crowned figure bows his head. Not devotion. Death. Her pulse stumbles. The memory rises before she can stop it. Snow. The smell hits first. Wet ash. Blood. Burned iron. Kareth Hollow buried beneath winter storms. Elara's boots sink nearly to the knee as she drags the unconscious boy across the mountain pass. Wind tears against her face hard enough to numb the skin raw. Blood streaks behind them across the snow in uneven lines. The boy cannot stay conscious for more than a few breaths. Silver spreads through the blood, leaking from beneath his coat. Not human. Even then she knows that much. Stay awake. Her voice cracks in the storm. The boy tries. Fails. The mountains groan around them. Somewhere higher along the ridge, riders search through the snow carrying dragon lanterns that burn blue through the dark. Royal hunters. Elara pulls him harder toward the forge lights below the ridge. Toward home. Heat explodes against freezing skin as she forces open the forge doors. Her father looks up from the furnace immediately, hammer still in hand. Then sees the boy. Everything changes in his face. Not confusion. Recognition. You found him where? No time. The older man crosses the room in 2 strides and catches the prince before he collapses completely. Silver blood stains the blacksmith's apron instantly. Outside, horns echo through the mountains. Closer than before. Her father drags Lucien toward the rear furnace chamber, while Elara bars the doors against the storm. The entire building rattles beneath the wind. Then the boy grabs her wrist. Hard. His eyes open for the first time. Gold burns beneath his skin. Yet somehow the dying prince knows it. The memory shifts violently. Night bleeding into morning. Lucien shaking uncontrollably beside the furnace while molten fractures crawl across his arms. Her father forcing dragon steel chains around the prince's wrists while old prayers shake through his teeth. If the fire breaks fully, he says, the mountain goes with it. Outside, riders arrive. The forge doors thunder under armored fists. By order of the crown, open. Her father looks at Elara. Only once. Then he shoves the iron key to the furnace chamber into her hands. Do not open this door, he says. The pounding outside grows louder. Then a second voice joins the soldiers. Cold. Female. Even through the storm, the authority in it freezes the room. Search every structure. Queen Seraphine. Elara's breath catches. Her father hears it. He steps toward the forge entrance without another word. The memory fractures again. Smoke. Screaming timber. The forge collapsing inward after Dragonfire tears through the roof beams. Elara crawling through burning ash toward the furnace chamber, while Lucien convulses against the chains, gold fire ripping through the metal restraints. The prince cannot control it anymore. Neither can the mountain. Elara. His voice breaks apart with pain. The furnace ruptures. Gold fire floods the chamber. Elara throws herself toward him anyway. The moment her hands close around the burning chains, agony detonates through her arm. Not heat. Something entering her. The world turns white. Then silence. Back in the vault beneath Aurelith, Elara grips the edge of the obsidian table hard enough to hurt. Her breathing turns uneven. Lucien steps toward her immediately. The movement alone tells her enough. He remembers too. Not every detail, but enough to have carried it all these years. You left before sunrise, she says quietly. Lucien stops. In the mountain pass. After the fire. His jaw tightens once. I woke alone. Outside, another distant explosion rolls through the capital. Lucien stares down at the floor. When he finally speaks, his voice lowers almost to nothing. The crown guard found me first. Not denial. Not excuse. Worse. Truth. Elara remembers waiting beside frozen ruins until the storm stopped. Remembers her father buried beneath collapsed stone. Remembers royal banners disappearing through the mountain fog without once turning back. A long silence. Then Lucien says, I tried to return. You obeyed them. The words land clean. No anger behind them. That hurts more. The convergence bells toll again overhead. One fewer. Elara presses trembling fingers against the gold spreading farther beneath her skin. It reaches nearly to her elbow now. The vault hum answers it immediately. Lucien sees the movement. Fear crosses his face before he hides it. She knew, Elara says. He looks up sharply. The queen. At the forge. I heard her voice outside. The torchlight flickers harder. Lucien goes completely still. Elara feels it then. Not suspicion. Confirmation. She knew someone survived the fire, Elara whispers. The silence that follows tells her everything. Lucien closes his eyes briefly. And in that single moment, the truth becomes unbearable. Queen Seraphine never stopped searching for the missing Dragonfire. She simply waited for it to consume whoever carried it first. The vault door above them slams open. Boots flood the staircase. Steel flashes through the dark. Lucien turns instantly, sword already in his hand before the first royal guards descend into the chamber. Torchlight collides against obsidian walls as armored figures spread across the lower steps. Then Queen Seraphine appears behind them. No crown, only black ceremonial robes trailing across the stone like smoke. The guards stop advancing the moment she lifts one hand. You lasted longer than the others. The words strike harder than shouting. Lucien turns toward her slowly. Others? The queen descends the final staircase, alone. The rebellion continues tearing through Aurelith above them. Vibrations reach even here. Dust drifts from the ancient ceiling. But Seraphine's voice remains calm. The voice of someone who has spent decades learning how to sound calm while everything burns. The dragon line survives because the fire must go somewhere. Lucien's expression empties. No, the corruption cannot remain inside the air indefinitely, Seraphine says. Not after the first binding. The queen approaches the shattered mural without hurry. Torchlight catches the ancient servant painted beside the kneeling king. One bearer each generation, Seraphine says quietly. Hidden, unnamed, close enough to absorb what the crown cannot survive. Lucien stares at the mural, as if seeing it for the first time. You used them. The kingdom used them. His sword lowers slightly. Not surrender. Shock. Seraphine turns toward Elara. For centuries the fire consumed them within months. Her gaze settles on the gold spreading beneath Elara's skin. You survived 7 years. A terrible silence follows. Elara suddenly understands why the mark worsens near Lucien. Why the vault reacted to her. Why the prince knelt. Not romance. Recognition. The fire inside him answers the part living inside her. Lucien's voice roughens. You knew she was alive. I suspected. You let her die slowly. Seraphine's expression does not change. I allowed the kingdom to survive. The answer lands like a blade across stone. The bearer receives what remains, Seraphine says finally. The words hollow the chamber. Elara feels her pulse stagger beneath the burning in her arm. Not survival. Completion. The ceremony was never meant to save her. It was meant to finish her. Lucien steps backward, once as if the air itself has turned poisonous. You built the throne on this. The throne exists because of this. The choice narrows until it barely resembles choice at all. Lucien looks at Elara then. Really looks at her. At the servant uniform still stained with wine from the Hall of Embers. At the gold burning through her skin. At the cost already written across her body, because she chose to save him 7 years ago. The rebellion pounds against the palace above them. The bells continue counting down toward dawn. And slowly, something inside Lucien breaks. Not loudly, not visibly, just enough. He lowers the sword completely, then says the one thing Queen Seraphine never expects to hear. Then let the throne die. We leave Aurelith tonight. The words strike the vault harder than the explosions above the city. Several guards shift immediately. Not from confusion. Fear. Seraphine stares at her son without moving. For the first time, the exhaustion beneath her composure shows. The weight of someone who has spent decades holding a secret that was always going to come to this. You speak like a man without a kingdom, she says. Lucien steps toward Elara instead of answering. The decision already visible in him. Not anger. Not rebellion. Withdrawal. Like something sacred has snapped loose inside his chest and refuses to bind itself back together. Another violent tremor tears through the mountain foundations. This one nearly throws a guard against the vault wall. A deep metallic groan rolls upward through the stone beneath their feet. The sky forges, destabilizing. The bells above Aurelith stop abruptly mid-toll. Then screams echo faintly through the palace foundations. The lower forge channels ruptured near the eastern districts. The guard's voice shakes. Fire spread into the residential terraces. Elara feels the blood drain from her face. The eastern terraces, worker districts, families packed into narrow mountain streets beneath the forge vents. Lucien curses under his breath and moves immediately toward the stairs. Seraphine catches his arm hard enough to stop him. If you abandon the convergence now, the remaining forge lines fail before sunrise. Lucien rips free. And if I stay? Neither of them answers immediately. That silence says enough. Elara watches the understanding settle across him piece by piece. Not ceremony. Containment. The dragon line is holding the mountain together. The city. The kingdom itself. Another deep groan shakes the vault. This time Elara feels heat pulse upward through the stone floor. The fire inside her arm reacts instantly. Gold fractures spread another inch beneath her skin. Pain flashes sharp enough to steal her breath. Lucien notices immediately. The same helpless look from Kareth Hollow. Elara, I'm fine. The light barely survives leaving her mouth. They ascend through the vault corridors while the mountain shakes around them. By the time they reach the western overlook above the lower palace gates, the city below has already begun to fall apart. Fire spreads across the eastern terraces in glowing fractures beneath the mountain ridge. Forge channels ruptured underground light entire streets in uneven waves. Bells ring without order across Aurelith. Not warnings anymore. Panic. Thousands of civilians crowd the palace approach below them. Families wrapped in ash-stained blankets. Children carried through smoke. Workers burned along one side of the body where molten forge fire burst through the streets. Elara grips the stone railing hard. A little girl below clutches a broken lantern while blood runs down her mother's arm. An old man collapses near the palace bridge and does not stand again. Nobody even stops moving around him. There are too many others behind them. The smell reaches the overlook seconds later. Burned metal. Smoke. Skin. Lucien goes still beside her. For several long seconds, neither of them speaks. Only the city does. The roar of dragons overhead. The crack of collapsing stone. People crying names into smoke. The silence between them grows heavier than words could survive. If we leave now, Lucien says quietly, they will never stop hunting us. Ash drifts through the air between them like dead snow. For the first time since the Hall of Embers, the prince looks afraid. Not of death, of becoming the reason this continues. She watches the refugees pouring into the palace courtyard below. Workers from the same district she crossed every morning carrying wine trays and coal buckets. Children from the lower terraces near South Veru. Families already losing everything. Lucien turns toward her fully. We can still get beyond the western passes before dawn. Hope flickers there. Small, desperate, real. And that is what finally destroys her. Because Elara understands then that if he chooses her now, Aurelith does not survive him. She looks down at their hands, at the prince holding onto her like she is the only thing left keeping him human. And silently, without letting her face change, Elara decides he must never choose her over the kingdom. The convergence bells begin tolling again. Final summons. No. Lucien says, like refusal alone can still stop what is coming. Seraphine emerges from the smoke-filled archway behind them. The forge heart is failing faster than predicted. Her voice carries the flat calm of someone delivering a verdict. If the rite does not begin now, the mountain tears open before dawn. Lucien grabs Elara's wrist. We're leaving. His voice breaks against the last word. Not weakness. Desperation. Another explosion erupts beneath the eastern terraces. The mountain shudders. Thousands scream at once below them. Elara closes her eyes briefly. When she opens them again, the decision is already finished. She presses one shaking hand against Lucien's chest, feels the unstable fire raging beneath his heartbeat. Then she steps away from him. Lucien grabs her arm. No, but the guards are already moving. The convergence chamber lies beneath the sky forges at the heart of Aurelith, carved directly into the mountain's oldest volcanic stone. Heat rolls through the corridors in violent waves. Ancient dragon glyphs along the walls pulse brighter with every bell toll. The deeper they go, the louder the mountain sounds. Breathing, the chamber opens beneath them in a circle of molten light. Ancient chains hang above a massive forge basin glowing white-hot. Dragonfire spirals upward through carved channels surrounding the central platform. Nobles crowd the upper terraces. Royal priests, military commanders, dragon riders stained with smoke and blood. All of them fall silent the moment Lucien enters beside Elara. Not because of him, because of her arm. The gold fractures burn visibly beneath her skin all the way to her shoulder. Whispers spread instantly. Firebearer. Lucien steps onto the central platform and pulls Elara beside him. The dragonfire below reacts immediately. Flames surge upward through the forge channels hard enough to shake the chamber walls. Begin the rite. Priests move forward carrying ceremonial blades forged from black volcanic steel. Lucien does not release Elara's hand. Even now, the first cut opens across his palm. Blood strikes the forge basin below. Dragonfire erupts upward instantly, and then violently twists toward Elara instead. The chamber gasps. The flames coil around her body like recognition. Not attack. Recognition. Every glyph across the chamber ignites at once. Elara feels the fire inside her arm rupture open. Pain tears through her hard enough to bend her forward. Elara, but she barely hears him now. The forge is calling to the fire inside her. Not him. Her. That's impossible, Seraphine says. The flames spiral higher. Ancient chains above the forge begin rattling violently against the ceiling stone. The entire chamber trembles as the dragonfire abandons the royal bloodline completely. Elara forces herself upright. The fire inside her burns white now. Dying white. She looks at Lucien one last time. Really looks at him. Then, before anyone can stop her, Elara steps directly into the center of the convergence flame. The chamber erupts into chaos. Lucien lunges after her, but the fire explodes outward hard enough to throw everyone backward across the platform. Heat detonates through the forged chamber. Priests scream. Nobles scatter. And inside the heart of the flame, Elara raises her burning hand toward Lucien. The remaining dragonfire tears out of her body. Into him. Lucien collapses to one knee with a cry ripped straight from the lungs. Gold fractures spread instantly across his throat and chest as the dragon line stabilizes violently inside him. The sky forges roar back to life overhead. The mountain steadies. Aurelith survives, but the fire does not stop. It circles Elara instead, around her body, her skin, her heartbeat. Then slowly, before the entire kingdom, an ancient symbol of living flame burns itself across her shoulders. Not the mark of a fire-bearer, a crown. The chamber falls into stunned silence as the first flame chooses Elara, the servant from South Vaelor, instead of the royal bloodline. No one moves. The first flame continues burning across her shoulders in slow, living patterns, gold light threading beneath her skin like molten veins. The forge winds spiral around her body instead of consuming her now. Recognition. Submission. High above the convergence chamber, the sky forges stabilize fully for the first time that night. The violent tremors beneath Aurelith begin fading into deep, uneven pulses instead of catastrophic rupture. The mountain survives, but the silence inside the chamber feels far more dangerous. Priests stare in horror. Several nobles step backward instinctively as if the flame itself might judge them next. The old succession rites are broken. Publicly, irreversibly, Lucien remains on one knee where the transferred fire nearly destroyed him. Blood runs from the corner of his mouth. Gold fractures burn across his throat and chest like fresh scars carved directly into bone. Yet even through the pain, his eyes never leave Elara. She sways once. The fire inside her body feels thinner now. Not gone. Changed. The years it stole from her still remain written beneath her skin. Lucien rises unsteadily and reaches her just before her knees give out completely. His hands catch her carefully this time, like holding something already half broken. Elara. Her name barely survives his voice. The forge light reflects in his eyes as he looks at the mark across her shoulders. Understanding settles across his face slowly. Not surprise. Acceptance. Around them, the entire chamber waits. For denial. For correction. For the queen to reclaim control. Queen Seraphine does not move. For the first time since the Hall of Embers, she looks old. Not weak. Worn down by the weight of something finally collapsing after generations spent holding it upright. The first flame has spoken, one priest whispers. Another drops to one knee. Then another. The sound spreads outward across the chamber in waves. Armor striking stone. Ceremonial robes folding against volcanic floor. Dragon riders lowering their heads. The old bloodline bends unwillingly toward the servant they once ordered through corridors with coal and ash. Elara stares at them in disbelief. This was never supposed to belong to her. Not the throne. Not the fire. Not any of this. She feels Lucien's hand tighten slightly against hers. Steadying. Not guiding. The distinction matters. Queen Seraphine finally descends the upper stairs into the convergence chamber. The nobles part around her automatically, though the authority surrounding her has changed now. Cracked. She stops several feet from Elara. Neither woman speaks for a long moment. The forge winds howl softly through the chamber behind them. Then Seraphine lowers her head. Not deeply, but enough. The eastern houses will challenge this by sunrise, she says quietly. The rebellion will call you illegitimate. The border clans will call you dangerous. And what waits beyond the volcanic frontier will come for you openly now. Elara feels the weight of those words settle into the chamber. No anonymity left. No servant corridors. No invisible life. Only consequence. Lucien steps beside her then. Not behind. Not ahead. Beside. The chamber watches him carefully. The prince looks at the woman who saved him twice. Once beneath her father's forge at Kareth Hollow, and once again beneath the mountain itself. Then slowly, despite the blood still staining his mouth, Lucien kneels before Elara again. Not desperation this time. Allegiance. The sight tears through the chamber harder than Dragonfire. A prince kneeling publicly before a servant crowned by the first flame itself. The old kingdom ends in that moment. Elara closes her eyes briefly. The exhaustion pressing through her body feels endless. So does the grief. Her father, her stolen years, the life she almost had, gone. And still the city above them burns. She opens her eyes again. Then, with visible effort, straightens her shoulders beneath the living fire mark. Not because she wants the crown, because Aurelith no longer survives without someone holding the fracture together. A royal scout stumbles into the chamber, ash-covered and barely breathing. He drops to one knee hard against the stone. Your Grace, his voice shakes violently. Dragon flocks are gathering beyond the eastern volcanic frontier. Dragon shadows pass slowly across the broken glass ceiling of the sky forges. Nobody in the chamber moves when the scouts finish speaking. Ash drifts through the open fractures above Aurelith. The forge channels beneath the floor pulse with unstable light. Weaker now, but alive. The first flame still burns around Elara's arm in thin veins of gold beneath torn skin. Every pulse reaches farther toward her shoulder. The court keeps its distance from her. Hours ago, royal ministers barked orders over her shoulder without seeing her face. Servants lowered their heads when she crossed the western halls. Guards searched her sleeping quarters without permission. Now nobody speaks unless she looks at them first. Lucien remains kneeling beside the ruined succession dais. The Dragonfire scars climbing his throat have cooled into blackened lines beneath his skin, jagged as shattered iron. He has not stood since the first flame chose her. Queen Seraphine watches from the lower steps beneath the forge altar. Her silver crown rests crooked against loose white hair. Soot stains her sleeves. For the first time since Elara entered the palace 7 years ago, the queen looks old enough to tire. Outside the forge walls, bells continue ringing through Aurelith. Not victory bells, funeral bells. Elara stares at the refugees, crowding the lower bridge entrances far below the palace terraces. Smoke hangs above the eastern districts. Families move through the snowfall carrying blankets, broken carts, children wrapped in burned cloth. One small boy pauses beside the gate arch. He looks up toward the forge towers, toward her. Then his mother pulls him forward again. Elara presses trembling fingers against the stone railing. The cold barely reaches her skin anymore. Lucien finally lifts his head. slowly, like it costs him something physical to breathe. You should sit, he says quietly. Elara almost laughs at that. Instead, she wipes blood from the corner of her mouth with the back of her wrist. I spent 7 years standing. The words fall between them softly. No one around them reacts. But Lucien's eyes close for half a second. That hurts him more than the rebellion did. For centuries, Seraphine says at last, the throne survived by hiding truth inside sacrifice. Her voice roughens slightly. This kingdom does not survive honesty well. Elara meets her eyes at last. Neither woman looks away. The queen lowers her gaze first. That changes the room more than any proclamation could. Lucien pushes himself upright unsteadily beside the shattered dais. His knees nearly give. Elara instinctively reaches for him before stopping herself halfway. He notices. So does she. The unfinished movement hangs there for a breath. Then Lucien straightens on his own. Below the forge chamber, horns echo through the lower city gates as more refugees enter the palace district. The sound carries upward through stone corridors. Endless, heavy, real. Elara looks down at the ruined succession seal burned into the floor beneath her feet. Royal blood built it. Royal eyes fed it. Her father died, protecting it without ever knowing what it truly was. And still the kingdom breathes because of it. Because of him. Because of her. Lucien steps forward carefully until he stands directly in front of her again, close enough that she can see exhaustion shaking beneath his composure. The same prince who knelt before a servant in front of the entire court now waits for her permission to speak. Not out of ceremony, out of choice. His hand opens slowly between them. Not demanding, not royal, just there. Elara stares at it for a long moment. Then she places her burned hand in his. Pain flashes through both of them instantly. Lucien's jaw tightens. Gold light flickers beneath their skin where the Dragonfire still connects them. Neither lets go. Below the forge chamber windows, snow begins falling harder over Aurelith. The city looks quieter beneath it. Not healed, just quieter. Far beyond the eastern volcanic frontier, somewhere past the black ridges where the old dragon kingdoms collapsed centuries ago, a distant roar rolls faintly through the mountains. The sound reaches the forge chamber seconds later. Low, ancient, answering,